Huffington Post has an op-ed. Should Democrats keep running to the left? Tuesday will tell. And I've seen some people, most notably James Lindsay, the famed professor from the Sokol issue. If you're not familiar, you can look him up. He said people should vote Democrat because we don't want the Republicans to have too much control. Right now it's one-party control. Not a good thing. That's his argument. And I don't necessarily agree. For me, I'm in New Jersey. So my choice right now for senator is Bob Menendez, who was accused of engaging in adult acts with not adults. Yeah. And Bob Hugin, who is accused, the pharmaceutical company of which he was CEO, I believe he was CEO, is accused of not presenting potential side effects which could have been fatal. So it's a tough choice. But for the most part, like what a business does and gets fined for is less on the shoulders of someone like Bob Hugin. Bob Menendez, on the other hand, has been accused of some pretty awful stuff. As I mentioned, doing adult things with not adults, if you know what I mean. So, innocent until proven guilty. But, the argument presented is that don't give the Democrats the one-party control. That's what James Lindsay is saying. What they're saying here is that Tuesday will tell if the Democrats should keep embracing the far left. They say the left, but come on, let's be real, it's the far left. According to The Economist, the Democrats have been splitting. Their base is now extremely stretched. And of 78 primaries, I believe it was 71 were won by moderate Democrats, okay, by a traditional Democrat. The Bernie Sanders wing of the party didn't work. It did not work. They lost the overwhelming majority of their primaries. I think, if you were to ask me, that just shows you they shouldn't go right to the left. They need to get rid of identity politics because they're losing the center and they're losing moderate leftists. I actually had some people tell me that they believe Republicans today represent the center left, the center right, the right, and the far right, whereas the Democrats represent the left and the far left. And that's why they lost in 2016. Because they don't realize there are working class left-wing individuals, working class Democrats, union people, like union families, who want to vote for Democrats, who believe in these things, who can't. Because you told them to go screw themselves. Well, apparently, tomorrow, the midterm, is the referendum on whether or not the left should whether or not the Democrats should keep embracing further left. If that's what they believe, I think they're hopeless. But it is true. To an extent, you could argue, if the Democrats win the House back, that the far left, identity politics, whatever it is they're saying, is working. At the same time, I can say, look, the far left candidates, they lost their primaries. And if anything, it's potentially a referendum on Trump. If people vote for Democrats, it might just be because they're voting against Donald Trump, not for the Democrats. If people vote for Democrats, they might just be voting against Donald Trump. The problem is, if people vote against Trump because they might be, center-left or your regular old social liberals, and they don't care about identity politics, they're embracing a party that continually, takes on identity politics. This has been one of the biggest problems for me when it comes to the Democrats. Almost all of them are playing the white male privilege game, the identity politics game, where they divide people based on race. I don't know if you've seen the Monk debate with Steve Bannon and David Frum. David Frum says that Donald Trump's party is not populism, it claims to be, but what he does is he separates and divides. When he says he's talking about the troops, he's not talking about the African Americans. That's what David Frum says. And I'm like, okay, let me get you straight. Let me get this straight here. You got the Republicans who you believe don't actually mean everybody and they only mean white people. You think, based on your assumption as to what they're saying, that's what Trump believes. Then you have the Democrats who straight up say, white, black, Mexican, Latino, they point you out and they segregate you. Now look, the mainstream Democrats are not that bad as the radical left, creepy weirdo regressive types who want some kind of reactionary left-wing policy of the return to segregation. But in order to court these people, the Democrats have embraced some of this rhetoric. They've embraced abolish ICE. What does that even mean? Like, seriously, there has been no cogent argument for why we should abolish ICE at all. The closest any of the Democrats have actually come is saying that we should restructure ICE back under the DOJ, which is to say that's not abolishing ICE. In fact, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, have clarified, no, it's not a reform, it's not a restructuring. Abolish ICE means get rid of it altogether, because they don't believe in immigration enforcement at all. And you have Democrats embracing this in a desperate bid to expand their reach. Why? Because they lost the center. So here you go. Here's your left, here's your right, and the center, but they voted for Trump. And so the left says, well, we could try and get him back, or we could reach, scrape from the bottom of the barrel. They're really scraping at the bottom of the barrel to get some of these fringe weirdos that they're reaching for. Let's see what this guy, Robert Kuttner, at the Huffington Post has to say. There has been a lot of argument about whether Democrats need to win by running more to the left or more to the center. In my writings, I've contended that the best way for Democrats to gain ground is to run populist on economics. I agree. Why? Because one, that's where the country needs radical reform. That's where Clinton-Obama Democratic Party lost its soul. If the election is all about identity, that plays to Trump's fear-mongering. And four, economic populism creates a politics of working people of all races against economic royalists rather than working people of different backgrounds against each other. Hear, hear, my man. That is 100% right. Why should I tell a white working class man and a black working class man they're enemies and one is more privileged than the other when they're both sitting in the gutter trying to figure out where their jobs went? It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. Man, woman, trans man, black, white, Latino, Mexican. If your job is gone, you want to know where that job went. But I'll tell you what, when your job goes away and your job goes overseas, it's not the other person of different color who made that happen. It's the rich, I was about to swear, it's the wealthy elites who control these systems who love open borders. Hillary Clinton, the elitist, she wanted open borders. She wanted free trade. Big business types like the Koch brothers, they like it too. Why? Why do they like these ideas? Because then they can put their factories in China and Mexico where they can pay garbage wages and not have to abide by U.S. labor laws. And the American working class of every race, color, and creed lose out. And it's these people on the left, these regressive, reactionary identitarians who want you, the working class individual, to turn to your brother, your sister in the United States and say, it's your fault because you're privileged. They want people to turn against each other of the same class. It is mind-blowing to me that I could have come from witnessing these protests in the U.S. about class war, Occupy Wall Street, the big banks, okay? The big banks, they bailed themselves out. Everything fell apart, and people said, WTF, mate, how can we fix this? From there to here. From a world where we were challenging those who were holding the power on the bets they made, the bets they lost, and how the working class was paying for it. To a world where it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or not. It doesn't matter if you're homeless or not. All they're doing is judging people based on the color of each other's skin. And that is my biggest problem with the Democrats. Now, again, the Democrats aren't overwhelmingly embracing this kind of stuff like the far left reactionaries do. It's just that the Democrats are embracing the far left reactionaries to gain support. And some of the Democrats actually are espousing this rhetoric, and some of these far left reactionaries are actually running in the Democrats. Even Michael Avenatti, who stands out different from many of these Democrats, who tries to be strong on borders, who has tweeted about how we need strong border control, played the identity politics game. When he got called out for saying the 2020 nominee should be a white male, he then played some game about white men having to, call out the privilege and check the privilege and all that stuff. He says, by working people, I mean not just the working class, often defined as the non-college educated, but anyone who lives on paychecks and is not filthy rich. It's a class politics that Democrats can and should win, and they could win. It's also a politics that can allow Democrats to win back some disgusted voters who voted for Trump because they didn't think either party spoke to their interests. In the debate with Steve Bannon and David Frum, Bannon said, it's not a question of whether or not the future will be populist or the old system. It's a question of whether or not we're going to have Bernie Sanders socialist populism or conservative populism. And he's right. And I think the reason we saw such a huge support for Bernie Sanders and for Donald Trump is because they're both populists. And the reason Hillary Clinton had to steal the primary from Bernie is because she's an elitist and nobody wanted her. She personified everything wrong with the government. She was giving speeches to Goldman Sachs. That is not what the American people wanted. I am entirely disgusted with mainstream politics right now. Because I see people in this country of all origins, of all races, genders, whatever, who are being pitted against each other by the far left. The far right's not, well, I would say the far right isn't necessarily doing it, but in sense of traditionalists, you still have the same kind of identitarian ideology that exists within the right. They're both fringe. The thing is, the mainstream conservatives will call out the alt-right for the most part, not all of them, but they typically say, get away from us. They even hold separate rallies. And the left will be like, yeah, but you know, Antifa ain't so bad. And then I'm like, listen, you've got a problem when a Bernie Sanders voter got clubbed on the head in Portland for holding an American flag. The American flag, sure, it can represent a bunch of bad things, but it also represents a lot of really good things. And for all the people on the far left who want to talk about how Western civilization, about how America has done all these horrible things, they never talk about all the really good things we've done and how we continue to do better. And I've been around the world, and I've seen some of these places that are really awful. And I come back to the US and I say, man, you don't really appreciate our government when you grow up here and you live here. I can only imagine the founding fathers would look at how, you know, for a couple hundred years our country has survived. When most constitutions last something like 12 years, ours has lasted over 200. And they'd be like, yep, we did a good job. They'd probably be surprised to find out how everyone thinks they're racist and about how how equal rights have expanded upon their creation. And I wonder what they would think if they saw that it used to be a world, it really was a world of white men. And you don't have to take my word for it. Miscegenation was illegal in the United States. Segregation, slavery, these things existed at this time. It was a very racist place. Even Abraham Lincoln was racist. And today, we're the least racist than we've ever been. I think the US is still relatively racist, don't get me wrong. But you need to understand the comparison, right? When I say that, I'm not saying that I think every individual is going around and doing something racist. I think there are just still remnants of a racist past. And that's why I find myself as a social liberal. But I don't agree with authoritarianism, and I don't agree with going up to Trump supporters and conservatives and bashing them over the head with bike locks because they don't agree with me. I think the US can continue to do better through education and understanding. And I will never expect and assume people will know what I know. The only thing I can do is try and be friends, is try and communicate. They don't do it. So that's why I think they're going to keep losing as long as they try and push this bullying rhetoric of divisive, you know, let me end with one story, okay, that I've told before. At Occupy Wall Street, there were two black guys. And one guy was helping organize, and another guy was yelling at him saying, why would you help these people? They're white people. And he said, now is not the time to point the finger at them and say, you know, I told you so, now you know how it feels. He said, now's the time to shake their hand and say, welcome to the fight, brother. What can I do to help? The reason is, if they didn't understand the plight you felt before, they do now, and now they are willing to join you. That's why you always reach out your hand and say, join me, let's be friends, and not call them the worst names in the book and bash them over the head. The midterm is tomorrow. This might be a referendum on identity politics again. Hillary Clinton lost. It didn't work. You can't tell the white people to go screw themselves. They vote. They voted against you. And if you don't change your ways, I think it's going to happen again. I could be wrong. My prediction is Republicans sweep it up. We'll see. Stick around. I've got another video coming up. I don't know when you watch this, but around 7 p.m., if it's already too late because this is my last video, I'm going to be doing a live stream with a liberal who's going to talk about the Democrats and why you should vote Democrat, and we're going to have a discussion about it. So I believe that will be up in about 1 minute if you watched this at 6:45 when I uploaded it. So anyway, I'll see you all next time, be it tomorrow or the live stream.